Okay, well, let's get this thing started. Um, I am, for those of you that aren't familiar with myself or with 4C recruiting, what I would tell you is that I spent about 15 years inside the mortgage industry. Started out as a loan officer and became a branch manager, was a producing branch manager for about 7 years, and then moved into full-on growing branches, building teams throughout a specific region. And so I speak from a position of experience, and that I think will be helpful for you to be able to hear those experiences as we walk through this. But you're looking at a screen right now that says "Recruiting Made Simple." I think that's an oxymoron to what most people think recruiting actually is. Most people believe that recruiting's hard, and that's a misnomer. What is actually true is that most people don't understand some of the basic principles around recruiting that don't necessarily even involve what we believe recruiting is all about. And so my intent today is to show you that, to give you a foundation that you can go out and be successful in the recruiting world, understanding that this is not a game of checkers. Recruiting, most people believe that recruiting is about identifying talent. It's about making contact with that talent and then creating next steps. And the misnomer in the mortgage industry as a whole is simply this, that the best recruiters are the best salespeople. And that's just not true. I coach people that are what I would consider non-salesmen, and take those people to being great recruiters simply because they understand some basic principles that are around recruiting. And so we take the game of recruiting, and instead of making it a game of checkers where I'm thinking one or two steps ahead, we make it a game of chess where, if you've ever played a good chess player, when I was 9, 10 years old, there was a Filipino missionary that came and stayed with my family for about 3 years. And he taught me the game of chess. And the most important principle of the game of chess is the person who thinks farthest ahead is the person that actually wins. And so it was best said by Andy Stanley once in his book, The Principle of the Path. It is the wisest person is the person who thinks farthest ahead. And so I'm going to show you today how to think ahead in this space of recruiting. So that's where the Recruiting Made Simple principle comes from. When we're done here today, I'm going to work very hard to keep this at an hour to respect your time. But when we're done here today, you're going to understand how to create your own unique recruiting system. There's nothing like this in the business today. You're not going to see it anywhere else. So this is a very unique system in itself I'm going to show you. But when we're done here, you'll be able to go out and just duplicate what I'm going to show you on your own. You're also going to understand what it takes to be an expert recruiter. It doesn't happen overnight, but you're going to understand the basic principles around that so that you can go out and recreate it. And then most importantly, how to do this in 15 minutes per day. The truth is, having been a branch manager in the business, I would tell you, you wear 15 hats on a normal day. There's no one that could create enough checklist around your job responsibilities to truly encompass them all. If we go through just a handful of those responsibilities, you're responsible for production growth. You're responsible as being a pipeline manager. You are a head firefighter. Any underwriting or closing issues, well, you're the one that has to handle those. You handle HR issues within your branch or branches. You're probably the primary contact for technology. You are probably the person in your branch that's known as what I would call the deal putter together, if that is such a word, but that's you. You set meeting agendas, you create marketing ideas, you're probably the office manager. We could go through this and come up with easily 15 hats that you wear, sometimes on a daily basis. And because of that, the thing that gets skipped at the end of the day is recruiting. But when you leave out this particular responsibility of growing your branch, of adding new loan officers or adding new branches, depending on what your responsibilities are, what you're doing is you're handcuffing your own income potential, your own career potential. And the truth is that in this business, specifically within the mortgage industry, the people that are most sought after are the people that have the skill set to be able to grow. And so if you will hone in on this one single talent, recruiting, building your brand, building your branch, becoming the person that you have to become in order to be able to accomplish that, you will become the most sought after person in your market. And I can speak to several moments in my career where people would come into a market where I had expertise, where I had relationships, and I was offered insane amounts of money just as sign-ons to go help them grow their brand in my areas. Now, I didn't accept those because that's not where my core values lie and not what I'm about. But I will tell you that if you have this one thing, you will be able to write whatever ticket it is that you want to write in your career. So what I would encourage you to do right now is turn off your phone. If you're on Facebook, if you're in email, yes, everybody's been busted. If you're on LinkedIn, wherever you are, there's going to be a lot of value here that you're not going to find anywhere else. But what I do want to do is I want to bribe you to stay all the way to the end, because in the very end of this, I'm going to give you one tip that no one else is using that will increase your chances of setting face-to-face appointments with loan officers. That one tip is going to be worth the 60 minutes that I'm going to invest with you. So a little bit about me. I started out with just a quick introduction. I got in this business as a loan officer and then became a producing branch manager. For 5 to 7 years, produced in that 30 to 35 million range as an individual producer. The market that I'm in, that is an average loan size of around 135,000. And so that was a lot of units. In other markets, I probably would have been maybe twice the volume with those same units. So producing branch manager, regional manager, VP, 15 years in the industry. In that window of time, the last 10 years that I was in the business, I grew more than 20 branches. I think the exact number is 21 branches. And within that, hired well over 120 loan officers. So I'm speaking from a place of experience, having walked about 100 miles in the shoes that you're in today. It was about 2014 that I built what is now known as the Recruiting Made Simple model. And it was a combination of a lot of what I would call epiphany moments, where I would do something and it wouldn't work, but then I would do something and it would work. And in 2014, I went off the grid for about a week and just said, I've got to build a recruiting system that I felt was sustainable, something that I could go and do again and again and again. And in 2014, over the next 14 months, I would launch 7 branches in those 14 months. And in 4 months, I would launch back to back to back to back branches. And so that's what I'm going to show you here today. What I do on the larger scale today is I help mortgage companies achieve high growth. And I do that in a number of ways. I actually build recruiting models and recruiting systems for top 15, top 20 mortgage companies. But I also, I think the part that I relish the most is getting to have the opportunities to rub elbows with the people that are on this webinar and really teach them some of the skills that made me successful. So with that said, I have done a lot of things right, but with that said, I have done a lot of things wrong. So let me just take a moment, because I don't want you to disqualify yourself. The first thing that I hear in talking to branch managers around recruiting is the majority, and I would say over half of the industry, says this: I'm a great leader, I'm a great manager, I am a horrible recruiter. So I want to disqualify myself because what I did is something that anyone can do. The things that I would go back and say that I did wrong, man, there's a really long list of those. And so I did it the hard way. So I think the first thing that I would tell you that I did the hard way was I called recruits over and over again. And I despise, hate's a really strong word, but I will use that word in this space. I hated cold calling. And I would say that this may be the one thing that keeps people from actually engaging recruits today, is having to make a cold call. So I despised it. I did it because I wanted to be successful, but I despised it. And that's the hard way. I'm gonna show you how to not ever have to make a cold call again in part of this presentation. The other part was I had a brilliant idea. I was running my own brand, managing my own P&L. And so I went and spent my P&L money to actually hire a third-party recruiter, bring them in, actually work exclusively for me and my branches, and spent almost $40,000 over the course of 9 months hiring that individual. And I did not hire a single person doing that. So I would say anyone that blows $40,000 and has nothing to show for it probably did it the hard way. When I sat down at the end of the 15 years of being inside the mortgage industry, when I accounted for all of the hires that took place, what I realized is that 9 out of 10 hires came directly from me. So only 1 out of 10 came either from an external recruiter or even an internal recruiter. And there's very specific reasons why that is, but that's the truth about the industry. Is that if you're going to grow your branch, if you're going to grow your region, if you're going to grow your area, whatever it is, the truth is that that's going to flow through you. It is not. If you have this dream that it will flow through an external recruiter, whether that be someone that works for your organization or someone that works for another third-party vendor, the truth is that that will not happen. The next way that I did that was really wrong the hard way was I hired the easy recruits. And if you're on this webinar today, the truth is that you've probably done the same thing, right? The ones that are the low-hanging fruit. And I'll show you in a second why that is, but all people fall into 3 categories. And the low-hanging fruit, the easy recruits fall into the categories of either being extremely hot, meaning that they're already moving towards something, and the misnomer in the business is that recruiting is all about timing. Well, if that is something that you've said before, the truth is that you're not hiring the right people, because it is not about timing. Timing is all about hiring the hot candidates and the warm candidates. You're right, that's all about timing. Those are most likely the candidates that you're not going to build a big brand around. And so that was one of the ways that I built my brand. I hired the easy recruits, and I would say at a very high percentage rate, those did not work out. And then lastly, I hired non-experienced loan officers. And we all know that we need to bring new blood into the mortgage industry, and that's just truth. But what I would tell you is that when I evaluated hiring a non-experienced loan officer and putting them through a very specific, very detailed, very well scripted plan, less than 50% of those did not work out. And so you combine all of that, I have failed a lot in the area of recruiting. But after doing it for 15 years, what I would tell you is I finally figured out that recruiting is simple. The head in the sand picture, that's just to keep you engaged here. Don't put your head in the sand, because recruiting is not hard. Recruiting is simple. What I also figured out is that great storytellers are great recruiters. So if there's a skill set that someone can work on, being a better storyteller is a skill set that will make you a better recruiter. So storytelling makes for great recruiting, and we'll talk about that in a second. I also figured out how to motivate recruits to move even when they were content, even when they were happy. And this is going to be the key to you becoming a great recruiter. It's not moving the hot talent that we know is going to move. It's not even moving the warm talent that's already identified they'll make a move in the next 6 months or sometime between now and March, which is the peak recruiting season. Ultimately, when you figure out how to move the content, the happy, the cold candidate, that's when you're going to hit the pinnacle of success in this business. And I figured out how to do that. And then lastly, I figured out how to do it consistently. So a few minutes a day is all you need. I'm going to show you how to do this in 15 minutes a day or less. So let me give you the easy way. We've already talked about the fact that I opened 7 branches in 14 months and 4 branches in 4 consecutive months. So here are the 3 secrets. And you can take notes. Let me just stop for a moment. Take notes where you want to take notes as we're moving through this. I'm going to send you a recorded audio. Each person on this that's registered will get a recorded version of this. And so you don't necessarily have to write all this down. You can actually just sit back and hear it and kind of receive it. I'll send this to you. That way you actually have it, the actual hard copy of this presentation, okay? Secret number 1, you must become an attractive leader, okay? Anytime I start working with either a group of managers or an individual manager, the first thing that I talk about is that this is the starting point for everything. You will hear me talk about positioning yourself as an attractive leader over and over again in this presentation. The truth is that being that individual is one thing. Like I would say that the majority of people that I meet in the business are great leaders. Where the with is, because you can verbally communicate that as being one thing, but the most critical thing and where you should be communicating this is through social media. LinkedIn, what a powerful tool. I would say the people that I work with, when I turn them onto LinkedIn and some specific things that they should be doing in LinkedIn, they are blown away by the fact that they're able to set appointments with loan officers without asking for an appointment, utilizing LinkedIn. And so the reason why being an attractive leader is so critical is that the game's really changed today. If you went back even as 3 to 5 years ago, you could be someone, introduce yourself to someone, and they would take you at face value who you're presenting yourself to be. But today, when you engage with a loan officer or you engage with another person you're recruiting, whether that be an underwriter, a processor, another branch manager, another leader, the first thing they will do is they will go vet who you are through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through Twitter, through whatever channel you're communicating who you are. And some of you may say, well, I'm not really communicating who I am. Well, then you're going to have to be okay with being branded through somebody else's lens. Because if you're not living out your authentic, true leadership in those places, then people will develop their own perception of you through the lens of the life they're living. They will create their own narrative of who you are as a leader because you're not communicating it. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about staying authentic to who you are and just being clear on that. We don't want to, and I would never teach anybody to go and fake it till you make it. Go create this leadership mantra that you're not really that individual. It's really simple. Just be who you are, but you're going to have to communicate that so that the larger market can see that. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. Secret number 2, you have to have a system. One, what I would also tell you is that it needs to be unique to you. So what I'm going to show you today, you've never seen before. When I built my recruiting model in 2014, I didn't care about sharing my model. In fact, the company I was with flew people into my market on a consistent basis. They could spend 3 days with me to see what I was doing because I was having a lot of success. I didn't care that other people were seeing what I was doing because you can't recreate you. You can't recreate me. And so the system I'm going to show you will build out that's unique to your core values. It's unique to who the authentic you is. But beyond that, most of you are doing some very elementary tracking of who you're connecting with, if you're doing that at all. Most people are using some form of Excel or maybe some form of using Outlook to create next steps. But you need a full-blown CRM system to really be able to take a candidate from one step to the next step and to stay fluid beyond more than 3 or 4 steps. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's not a system. I don't have a vested interest in showing you this system. I'm just going to show you a very simple system that in a matter of about 15 to 30 minutes after getting off this webinar, you can actually go create your own in a process that's unique to you. I'm going to model that for you here in just a few minutes. And then secret number 3, we've already talked about time. Time is the main reason why branch managers don't recruit. I hear that again and again. I don't have time. So I'm going to show you in 15 minutes a day how you can actually go. That's the 3rd secret. In order to create something sustainable, you have to be able to incorporate it into your current life. So if I said, go drop half of what you're doing and for half a day go recruit, and that's the model, you wouldn't do it. It's just not sustainable. What I want to show you is something that you could sustain not just a week from now, not just a month from now, not just a year from now, but you can sustain it for your career. Okay, so let's do a deep dive on the first secret. What makes you the attractive leader that everyone wants to work for? So in about 2010, 2011, I began to have a lot of clarity around creating vision. And a question you can ask yourself right now, am I an attractive leader? You can answer that almost immediately with, can you regurgitate your vision? Because if you can't, like right now, say, this is my vision, then this is a first step for you. This is going to be a space that you're going to want to work on. And I'll share this with you as to why, an easy formula for doing it, but why you want to do it. Because again, if you don't label yourself, you will get defined in your market. Other managers in your market, other companies in your market, they will all label you unless you're very clearly being that person, living out that person. So the attractive leader is simply this: someone who has a clear vision with very defined beliefs. But that's not just it. The other part of that is someone who's going to act true to that vision and belief. So when I go back to what do I represent, it has to be authentically you. Otherwise, you won't be able to live it out long term. Okay. It was about 2010, 2011 that I gained a lot of clarity around what my vision was. And I built it out into a very simple model, which is what I called pillars. So I think in terms of building a house or building a building or building anything, you start with a foundation, right? And on a house, you kind of think of four different corners. And so to me, those were pillars. Any successful business, any successful house, any successful model is built on some critical pillars, whether that be leadership pillars, whether that be revenue pillars. I mean, you're probably coaching your loan officers to do more than just work with real estate agents. Go work with other people, whether that be CPAs or financial planners or building their own grassroots network, or whether it be through networking events. They're building pillars out. So it was easy for me to just kind of think in terms of pillars. And I just said, what is Richard Milligan all about? What is authentically me? And one of the things that's been very true about me from the age of probably 19 or 20 is that I have been a pursuer of personal development, reading books, listening to podcasts, taking in additional information from leaders within either my immediate community or extended community, really allowing myself to be mentored through that process of personal development. And so I said, that's really true about me. I encourage my people to do it, constantly trying to inspire. I'm trying to be the cliff notes to success. So I said, personal development is one of my pillars. The other thing that I said, and I actually said it not because I was doing it, but because I knew I needed to do it, was leadership development. So I said, one of my pillars is going to be leadership development. I'm going to do a better job moving forward in this 2010 timeframe of actually leading my people to become better leaders. And so that became one of my pillars. The third pillar was something that's so true about the business, that if you're successful, you probably have strong systems. And any company that's successful, especially operationally, has strong systems. So I just said, I believe that systems equal success. And I believe that that has to be something that's sustainable. And so I said systems and systems equal success. And that was one of my pillars. And I would share with people what I believed around systems and how they were built into my operations teams and how they were built into my sales teams and even how they were built into my leadership. But then the last fourth pillar was growth. And I identified growth at the time as organic growth, meaning that if you were a loan officer or you were a manager and you came to my umbrella of leadership, I actually tracked growth within those individuals. So if you came to me in 2017 and you had done X, whatever X was, in 2018, what would you expect to grow based on Richard's leadership? And I even coined kind of a mantra around that, which is that growth is the natural progression of great leadership. And so those were my pillars. I began to share those with loan officers on a consistent basis. I put it into a presentation format, which is not part of what I'm sharing with you here, but what I would encourage you, if you don't have a presentation that does not, I will say this again, does not include products, does not include pricing rates, does not include compensation, does not include things like marketing, does not include things like benefits, then you are completely whiffing in the space of being able to present well to a loan officer what you really are about. So I would encourage you, work on a presentation really centered around your core values, centered around what your vision is. And I just did that in the form of 4 pillars. And then as I began to share that, this was just a season of growth, what I noticed is that people moved towards me much faster. So instead of it taking 18 months to 2 years to recruit someone, I could recruit someone in 60 days. And it was just an epiphany moment when I'm sitting in my office. I had just recruited a loan officer. It had taken me about 2.5 weeks to recruit this individual. And I was a good producer in my market, someone that was doing 8 to 10 units. They're down the hall, their door's open, my door's open, and I just kind of hear this individual on the phone talking to the real estate agents. They've been there for maybe 2 to 3 days. And the conversation kind of goes like this: let me tell you the reasons why I'm here. And they went into the 4 pillars that really represented me. They didn't represent my company. It didn't represent anything more than what Richard Milligan was all about. And that for me was an epiphany moment that I really began to lean in this space and really identify, what am I all about? And be able to communicate that very clearly. And then beyond communicating that, beginning to really live it out. And so I'll share with you the power of this. When I said leadership development was one of my pillars, I really recognized that I wasn't really leading people to become better leaders. I was just leading them to become better in general. So in the same timeline, around 2010, 2011, what I did was I developed a model for the first 90 days, all because of this. When somebody came into my brand, what would I do? And so I would take them through a process that I call One Word, which I had not been doing. There's a great book out there titled One Word. And what it does is it reframes the way we think about goals and goal setting and everything that goes on when we think about setting those goals and planning those goals out. And it condenses it down to one word. And so I took my entire group through this, began to do it on a yearly ongoing basis where everyone would develop one word for the entire year. So your word might be freedom, it might be fearless, it might be sacrifice, it might be trust. It could really be anything, but it would shape what your lens was going to be for the next entire year. And so it became part of when someone came into my group, they would always go through one word. We would develop their one word out, and they would communicate that to me, and I would communicate that to the team. And then anytime we met, everything was shaped around that. I also took on another book, which is Rhinoceros Success, which is just a really fun, cheesy read. It really just says that rhinos are charging and cows are grazing, and we want to be rhinos, right? And so I took that, and within the second month of someone being there, they would go through the Rhinoceros Success. And so we would go around the office and say things like, we're rhinos, we're not cows. It was at a rhino moment. But then the last part was going through Darren Hardy's book, The Compound Effect. A great book, really talks about how small things make big differences. When someone came in, I could very clearly say, this is the way I'm leading. And when I was representing who we were to loan officers that didn't know anything about us, I could share stories around that. And so that became authentic. That was a powerful thing that came from this, that became authentic and real about who we were. So let me get back to kind of the second bullet point there, which is, why being an attractive leader is important today. We've mentioned it before, the power of social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, being able to connect with your audience. If I'm the guy that's representing personal development, leadership development, systems, and growth, it's very easy for me to define what I'm going to represent in this space outside of my immediate face-to-face, phone-to-phone conversations, right? So what I would encourage you to do, and I would say this isn't an encouragement, you really have to demand this from yourself. In the space of LinkedIn, in the space of Facebook, begin living out who you are, okay? Personal persona used to be something you could have, but today the game has changed. Your personal persona and your business persona are one and the same. When you call a loan officer and you introduce yourself to them, they're going to go see what that persona is. And if you say you're something else, but you're not representing that in that other space, then they may disqualify you. So, document over create. So, meaning just document what you're doing as a leader. You don't have to go create awesome, photos with great elaborate quotes. Just document what you're doing. That's very simple. It's you have a sales meeting and something good came from that sales meeting. You have something positive happen in the office every day. You have these happenings going all around you, whether that be within the office or outside the office or in your family or whatever that is. But just document what you're going through. That way people can connect with you and see who you authentically are. The other reason why being an attractive leader is so important today is that we're in a different environment. Okay, if you look at 2008 to 2000 and probably beginning of 2016 or mid last year, the regulatory environment really changed. And right now there's less regulation than there has been at any point in almost an entire decade. And so what I will tell you is that most recruits are content where they are. So if you can only move hot and warm talent, you are playing a lose-lose game. You have to figure out how to move content people. And there's two different reasons why people move. As humans, we either are avoiding pain or we are seeking pleasure. That's really it. And so the last decade, people have really been moving away from pain and move because there have been issues in TRID and issues in the operational inefficiencies. And and as we look into 2018, Fannie Mae says that the market's going to shrink, it's going to contract. And so operationally, most companies are going to be in an incredible place, right? The talent pool's deep as it pertains to operations, so the best of the best are going to be available for people. And there's just a lot of talent in the market. There's not a lot of volume, and that's going to require companies to actually feel any pain around the operations piece. And so when you are dealing with a recruit that's content, attractive leadership is the most powerful thing that you can do to plant what I would call a seed of discontent. So you now become the measuring stick for their current leadership. Let me give you an example. Go to my 4 pillars. If you had a loan officer that met with another leader in your market and they said very clearly, these are the things that I'm about, and let me tell you some stories around this, right? Because storytelling is such a powerful thing. They were sharing a very clear vision about not just what they believed, but what they were actually living out, right? So it's the having the vision, but acting out the vision. Then they come back and they measure that other leader that they're currently with against that. So maybe this is a challenge to you as a leader to step up and become that attractive leader. Maybe it's not a challenge to you and you're already being that individual, but you just need to communicate it more clearly. You need to be more defined in this space. Okay. So creating your positioning as an attractive leader, we've talked about the 4 pillars. That's simply what is authentic and true about you. What are your core values? The easiest way to communicate is this, and I'll share my example with you. So your vision really simply is this: my mission is to what? Fill in the blank. I talked to a guy earlier in the week, and he said that his mission was to hire 5 loan officers and help them double their business in 2018. Well, he clearly understood what his mission was. The other question you ask yourself is, when will I achieve my mission? I achieve my mission by fill in the blank. And the last one is, I will know that I've achieved my mission when. So as a live example of that, let me just share mine with you. Here's my mission: to help people to grow their business faster than they would in the absence of my help. How I achieve my mission? I achieve this by teaching recruiting skills that enable people to vastly exceed their previous accomplishments. And then I'll know I've achieved my mission. So I measure it by like this: I will measure success by helping more than 100 branch managers each year live the life only possible through growing their brands. So I'm very clearly articulating who I am as a leader and what I am all about. Okay. The last bullet point on here is storytelling. This is something that gets missed. In fact, I don't really hear it brought up in the mortgage industry ever. So think about your life. Now, I'll just think about my life here and share with you. I live in story, okay? I've got 4 kids. I love the outdoors. We're constantly on the go. We've always have kids in sports, or we have something going on with the family, okay? If you knew part of my story, you could very easily understand my why. You could very easily begin conversation with me. And so we all live in story. In fact, if you look at the Bible's written in a story format, okay? You probably have a best friend. Most people would say, I've got a best friend. I don't see them often, but anytime I connect with them, I don't know why, but we can always pick up where we left off. Well, the reason why is because you all have shared stories, right? You all understand each other's stories. So the bottom line is that as humans, we all live in a large story, okay? And so some of us come by storytelling naturally, and I would say that I don't come by it naturally. It's something that I've had to work on. There are others that are natural storytellers. If this is a place for you where you're not a great storyteller, you're going to have to dig deep here. My 2 oldest kids are boys. Ethan, he's my 15-year-old, just not a storyteller. In fact, if you said, Ethan, tell me a story, he could probably grunt a few words, and that's about it. But my 10-year-old, Gavin, when he was 5 years old, at Grammy's 70th birthday party, where there was 200 people on stage. They said, who would like to share a story about Betty? He was the first one on the stage, and he actually started his talk with, I'd like to tell a story about a time when Grandma did, and then left, and then went on to tell the story. So everyone can become better storytellers. If this is an area you want to grow, drop me an email. I'll send you a recorded webinar that Andy Andrews did last year on storytelling, and he really takes you through crafting stories. He takes you through the power of great stories. And here's why it's so critical. Don't miss this. This is why it's so critical. Most of the people on this webinar are, the way that they're presenting to their potential recruits is only triggering left brain properties. Okay, you're triggering things that require them to vet and verify. Products. Talk to me about your products. A recruit is a normal question they would ask. How are your rates? How are your benefits? What do you all do in terms of marketing? What's your compensation look like? Those are all left brain property. They're going to vet. So I would say what I see in working with people is about 90% of the things that we're doing are activating left brain properties. When you tell a story triggers the imaginative properties of the right brain. When you do that, you're engaging emotion. A perspective can radically change results without ever changing a single fact. And so what I would encourage you to do is change your recruiting presentation. Make it surround it with you as the attractive leader, stories of your leadership. I call these what I would call anchor stories. They anchor your presentation. Okay. I'm going long on time here, so I was going to draw you kind of why it's so important. I'm going to skip over that here just to try and stay on track. But what you have to understand is that the three categories: cold, warm, and hot. Hot prospects don't need epiphanies. Okay, they're going to move regardless. Warm prospects, they don't necessarily need epiphanies because they're going to move regardless. It is the content, it's the cold candidate. What they need in order to get warm and in order to get hot is they need what is known as an epiphany bridge. Okay, so you have to take and build this bridge for them where they're cold, but it's a way for them to get from being cold to being warm. And you do that through epiphanies. You create epiphanies because of the stories of your leadership. You create epiphanies because you have these anchor stories that are in your recruiting presentation that talk about what you guys are doing within your group, within your systems, within your leadership, within your culture. So work on becoming a better storyteller. If you want the presentation, just drop me a line at rmilligan@4crecruiting.com, and I'll respond back with the storytelling webinar. It's about an hour and is well worth the investment of your time. Okay, secret number 2, building a system and a process that's unique to you. I would normally spend about, even on this webinar, about 15 to 20 minutes walking you through this. I'm going to go quick on this so I can get to the third one. But here, let me explain to you why having a system in place is so critical. Structure is always critical to everything, right? Think about it in terms of just life in general. If I said, go live the opposite of a structured life, and for the next 90 days, you slept in, you ate crap, you showed up late for work every day, you stayed up late watching Netflix, and in every area of your life, you let things go. Bills, working out, relationships, food, whatever. You get to the end of that 90 days and I ask you the question, how's that working out for you? It's not going to work out very well, right? So having a system in place is the structure for everything. If you're going to be successful, you have to have a system. And a system is not identifying talent, making calls, making presentations, and trying to move them to the next steps. It is simply not that. And those are things that we typically do. And when we do them very randomly, right? So what I'm talking about, as much as structure and system, is really about excellence. This is about being successful on the largest scale. So having a system in place really creates a solution for all of this. You can have minimal success on the recruiting side, okay? And a lot of times where we are elementary recruiters, we aren't even really fairly evaluating ourselves. So I'll give you an example. I talked to a girl 2 weeks ago, and she said, I'm doing pretty well on the recruiting side. And I said, Talk to me about that. What does that mean to you? Well, she said, I've hired 3 loan officers in the last 3 to 4 months. I said, wow, that's impressive. That's great. Talk to me about the loan officer specifically. And while she was telling me, I jumped on NMLS. It's very easy to hit her location, hit her name, pull up the people that are in her branch. The 3 people that she was talking about that she had hired, I counted between those 3 people 27 places of employment over the course of the last 5 years. Now you do the math, that's 9, I think that's 9, right? 9 times 3. That's 9 each. What are the odds that she's going to keep that talent? It's just not great. And the odds that it is the right talent is 0. Okay? So I would encourage you, even look at the people that you've hired and evaluate yourself based on the talent that you're bringing. It doesn't mean that you don't give people a shot, but what I'm saying is how are you doing at moving the producer that doesn't move once every 3 to 4 years, and then evaluate yourself from that. So having a system in place is critical. Most people, what they find by having a system is that by just having a next step, it helps them gain momentum in recruiting. Most people don't have clear next steps. And I can give you so many examples because of what I do. Talking to a guy last week, I've actually put a candidate in front of him because part of what I do with about 30% of my time is I recruit. I put a candidate in front of a area manager. He met with this individual for an hour. He got done. He called me and he said, "I think it went well." And I said, "Yeah, tell me what are the next steps?" I mean, that was my first question. Tell me what are your next steps, because that will tell me how well they did. And he said, "Well, his next steps is to think of some questions and to email them to me so that we can get back together." Well, that is not a next step. Okay, anytime that you're placing the ball in someone else's court and you're waiting for them to do something, that's not a clear next step. And so without clear next steps, you get caught in these weird spots. And when someone delays and doesn't respond like you need them to, they end up being dead ends instead of highways for conversation. And so maybe the best way for you to actually view recruiting is through the lens of dating. So think about speed dating. If you were going to, I'll just use my relationship with my wife. We've been married for almost 19 years. I can go back to the very beginning, and I can tell you the first 2 months that we knew each other, like we were talking all day, every day, together every evening. Any moment we had to spend with each other, we did. And because we did that, what we figured out was, what are your dreams? What are your desires? What do you want out of life? Like, what do you think a family should look like? Like, what are your belief systems? We figured all this stuff out because, in essence, we speed dated. And at the end of 2 months, we're saying, "I love you," right? And we're in our minds, whether we announced it or not, we're thinking we can actually get to a place till death do us part. So you have to look at your recruiting through the lens of that, okay? Now, the difficult part is you can't call a recruit every single day and say, "Do you want to come work for me? Do you want to come work for me?" You can't text them, "Hey, how's it going over there? We're better than your current lender." You can't do that stuff. So you have to figure out creative next steps that allow you to, in essence, build relationship very quickly. So in 2014, I sat down and I evaluated at the end of 2014, going into 15, several things. How long it took me to recruit the group that I had at that time, and at the time I was using a CRM system. I'm going to show you the one I was using that actually would tell me from the moment I put somebody into it and the moment I hired them, how long was that? And it was 62 days. From the time I met somebody, the average candidate I hired was 62 days. And I'm not hiring at this point in my career, I'm not hiring the hot and the warm candidates. I'm hiring the right candidates. And so what I'm telling you is that having clear next steps allows you to gain momentum in recruiting and allows you to move people beyond that place of being happy and content, okay? So part of this is, having a system allows you to create a process that's unique to you and really centered around who you are as a leader. What are your core values? But you also want to show them that you understand what is their why. And then lastly, it allows you to pick up in conversations. So if you've got a system, in this case a CRM, it allows you to actually go back to that 6 months from now and to remember you had a conversation with Richard about his dog who died the day before of some weird, happenstance. And you can reflect back on things like, when you connected with me, it was my wife's birthday. You can reflect back to, I'm working on this specific deal and I'm just going up against a brick wall and I can't seem to figure it out. They've got a 720 credit score, and D, you won't give it an approved eligible, right? You can bump up against those things because you're logging the conversations. It also gives you a place that the moment you walk out of a face-to-face, you can take all the notes you need to take, store them in a location so that you can revisit those again and again and again. So it is the equivalent that having a system, a place to store that information, allows you to build relationships so much faster. You don't have to pick up and start all over again. Most people, when they're recruiting, pick up and start over again and again and again, and they feel like they're not getting anywhere. And the truth is that they should already have a foundation. There should already be a relationship there. They should already be able to refer back to things they know. They got 3 kids, 2 are in sports. Next month's a big deal to them because they're leaving to go to Hawaii for a week or whatever that is. A year from now, when I bring up that conversation to the candidate about, hey, what did this time last year that you guys took that trip to Hawaii? Are you guys going to take that trip again? It allows me to go deeper on the relationship piece and allows me, in essence, to speed up the timeline that I can take a candidate from not being interested to actually being interested. So here's what I would encourage you to do, because I'm short on time. We're around 45, 46 minutes right now. Create your own whiteboard CRM. There's a tool out there called Pipedrive. If you go to pipedrive.com, you can actually sign up for a free 2-week trial. It is a whiteboard system that allows you to create your own process and your own systems in it. Very quickly, let me jump out of this. I'm going to just give you a very basic, very brief overview on this tool. I'm going to move this across to my screen. You're seeing right now, this is a Pipedrive system. I have a generic login right here that I'm going to use that I've created for this. So I can show you this, but this is what the tool looks like. We're going to take like 60 seconds to review it. What I want you to see here is these right here, the initial pipeline, not a fit, great fit cold, great fit hot, site visit, whether they're coming to your local office, whether they're joining your company, and when you've hired them. Those are all different pipelines that I've built in this system. So you can do whatever you want. Let me just walk you through some methodology here. So I'm going to create real quickly here a deal. We're just going to call it Richard Milligan. This will take you like 5 minutes to figure out. And we're just going to say I'm a $24 million producer. I'm not going to put any more information in there. We're going to do this. And here I show, right? I show up in my initial pipeline up here in the top right, underneath new prospect. I'm just going to walk you through the mindset of this. I have just identified Richard Milligan as a prospect. Okay, I think in terms of a race. I start at the left, that's the start line. I finish at the right, that's the finish line. Now, as I'm moving, I made myself a $240 million producer. As I'm engaging with him, I'm going to move him across to different categories. Now, my pipeline looks different to you because when I was doing this, I recruited loan officers, branch managers, and regional managers. But I would move them across to a first phone call. So if you were a prospect, this is where I would initially identify you. I'd put you in a top LO list, a top BM list, and a top regional manager list. And then eventually I'd move you to a first phone call. If I missed that call, I'd move you to a follow-up to a first call. And if I actually connected with you and we engaged and we had a face-to-face after the initial call, you would have an interview with Richard. Now, I've created all the headings here. So I'm shortening these to be able to get a lot of tabs on this page. But if you met with me, my next step would be to actually send you a presentation beyond that immediately with a thank you note. And you would get that within less than 24 hours of us having that face-to-face, because I wanted a clear next step. Beyond that, I would move you to a pipeline. Okay, so these are the other pipelines here. Right? When you engage with talent, you can identify people as not being a fit. Either they lack production or they're just not the right fit, right? There's someone who would ruin your operations. You could put them in another category. You're going to identify talent that's a great fit cold, meaning that, man, if I could get them, that'd be my dream person, but they have said, I've got a bonus coming in May and I am not leaving until then. And so this is June or July or August or whatever. I'm not going to get them potentially for 10 months. They're a great fit cold. But where you will typically move people in this is great fit hot, okay? And so I'm just going to take this and we're just going to run through this real quickly. Great Fit Hot. I drop that in there. This just allows me to drag and drop. Now I changed my pipeline to Great Fit Hot, and now I have an entire process built out here. I'm not going to go through this process. This is a very specific process I've built around a model that was true about me. Each leader's model looks different, okay? And so I would encourage you to explore that, but you have to have next steps. In this system, there's 36 next steps, okay? So think about it. Most people have 3 or 4. I have 36. I can sustain a lot of momentum. I'll send you a corporate presentation. I will get your home address, and there's a key to getting that, but getting the home address, I will send you the book with a thank you card. I will send you a creative marketing piece that we put together that actually has your face on it. I will send you a goals email around me and my goal setting and my beliefs of that. I'll send you a rhythm register. I will then send you a second book. I will then do a random act of kindness. I will then, and so you kind of get the point in this that I'm making, that this is a great tool. You're going to put basic information in here, email address, phone number, full name, and any of the nuggets that you get around that individual. Place here to take notes. I can add an activity right here in order to follow up with you. I can actually upload documentation here if I wanted to. I can put all your information, a home address, any of that stuff I can put into this, okay? Okay, enough about that. We'll move on. We're trying to keep this within the 1 hour. Let me go back to full screen. So that's how you would create your own CRM. It'll cost you $6 a month to do it, okay? Last secret here, the power of 15 minutes. So what my intent is, and hopefully what I'm giving to you here, is the mindset that once you build this system out, you're going to require a few things each day that you're going to do that are habits, new habits for you. Because if you can create a handful of habits, logging into your new CRM every single day as a first thing, right? That's a new habit. It says that recruiting is important. Little things like that allow you to take just a few minutes each day and to become a powerful recruiter. So the key here is that I don't believe in cold calling. Okay, so let me just take a moment and just I'll go over each one of these bullet points specifically, but let me tell you why not cold calling is so important. The best way to ruin an opportunity is to call somebody cold. With the information that's available today on the World Wide Web, in LinkedIn, through Zillow, through Trulia, through just Googling somebody's name, you can get so much information that there is no 6 degrees of separation. So I think a lot of us would remember, the 6 degree of separation rule, which is that the entire universe is only separated by 6 people, okay? The truth is today, you can connect the dots on someone that you're connected with, that they're connected with in such a way that you can warm up a call. I can go to, let me just model this for you. Probably the best way to show you this is to model it for you. Let me go to Zillow for a second. I've got a couple people on the call today here that look like they're from Arizona. If you're not using Zillow, use Zillow. This is such an easy tool. I'm going to Zillow.com. I'm going up to mortgages. I'm going to lender reviews. Okay, it's going to immediately pull up my location, my closest location. I'm in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is central Oklahoma. But I want to enter, let's do Phoenix, Arizona. I'm not sure if the people in Arizona are from Phoenix. We'll use this as an address. So I just entered Phoenix, Arizona. I hit search, and up pops mortgage companies and people that are in the Phoenix, Arizona area. Okay, I can go through here. I can click on anybody that I want to click on. This guy's got 162 reviews. He knows what he's doing, right? I mean, they're all 5 stars. I'll just click on his name as an example. I don't know Michael McDermott. If anybody knows him, tell him I'm using him as an example. But immediately when I pull up Michael's profile on Zillow, I now have his cell phone number. I now have his website address. I'm going to walk you through the mindset that you should be using when you're identifying talent so that you're not making cold calls, okay? Immediately I see this myazlender.com. Cool website. I made a note of that. I'm reading through this very quickly right now. trying to figure out there's something here that I can connect with. Okay, so here we go. Began his career in the mortgage industry as a telemarketer. My first job in business was a telemarketer, and I did that for about 18 months. So I have a connection there. And again, I'm doing this quickly. I'm going to go through his reviews. And I'm going to find a review that is a cool review that I can actually bring up on the call with him. Trying to do this quickly so that we're not wasting a lot of time. I could honestly select any of these as reviews, right? My husband and I were first-time home buyers. You know, I saw another one up here. We said, dream of home ownership coming true. This guy up here said something about his son, first home purchased. You can go through here. Now, I've got enough information. If I spend a few minutes here, in just a minute or two, I can warm up the call when I call Michael, okay? Very easy script. Michael, listen, I've been doing some research in my market. I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I got to say, you're an impressive guy. Like, I don't know anyone that has 162 five-star reviews on Zillow. Man, kudos to you. You're obviously doing a great job. Yeah, I noticed we've got a few things in common, right? You began in the industry as a telemarketer. You know, I could talk about that for a few minutes. I could also say, man, I noticed your website. Man, what a cool website. Like, that's so easy to remember, myazlender.com. Way to go, and just thinking outside the box in getting that website. So I have very easily now gone from a place of, hey, Michael, this is Richard calling to recruit you and tell you about my company, to allowing him to let down his guard, because now I know things about him, right? And I'll even talk, listen, I went through your reviews and I noticed that this one person said this one thing about you, and find something that's unique that you can actually bring up. I just warmed up the call to Michael. All right, so those guys in Arizona, gals in Arizona that are on this webinar, you all can race to use that information and blame it on me. That's the reason why you're calling him. But that's why I'm saying, do not make cold calls when so much information is readily available to you today. I will tell you, for instance, I was recruiting for an organization that wanted a large platform in a state. In researching this individual, I not only found out the information through that I'm talking to you about right here. I found out this individual was very involved in the community, had actually held a fundraiser for a young man that had cancer. I found out that not only were they just involved in things like fundraisers in the community, but that they were doing some things that were outside the box. This particular leader I went through his entire branch using NMLS, identified the talent he had in his branch. And so when I called him, I made some statements, and they were statements that raised more questions than they actually were answers. And so I said some things like, listen, I know you're a bit of a risk taker, and I think you'd be a great fit because of that. And it piqued his interest. And he said, and you're saying a lot of things about me, like, how do you know this stuff? So I went through your branch. I looked at the profile of the people that you hired, and over the last 3 years, you've hired 3 people within that window of time that either had no experience or just months into experience. And so I can tell you love investing into people. I can tell that you're a bit entrepreneurial. I can say that you are a bit of a risk taker because you trust your internal processes and systems. And so I connected the dots on some things because I did a bunch of research and I prepared for that call. To this day, that has been 3 or 4 years ago. To this day, I still have a relationship with that individual because of how I engaged in that conversation. And that individual immediately moved towards me, immediately did some of the things I was hoping he would do. So no more cold calls, only warm calls, okay? One of the keys to keeping it to 15 minutes per day is to not overwhelm yourself. So look at my first bullet point there. This is just a mind trick. 30 recruits list, on a 30 recruits list, it allows you to focus on one person per day. If I said focus on 30 or 25 per day, you would just say it's too much. But can you identify the talent of one person and make that phone call each day? Yes, that's a sustainable system. I just did the math. You're going to make somewhere around 250 to 300 calls over the next year just by doing that one thing, okay? So identify one recruit you're going to call per day, have that list with you, and make the call. The other thing is use Slide Dial. If you haven't used Slide Dial before, it's a smartphone app. It allows you to backdoor voicemail a cell phone number. It's guaranteed to backdoor voicemail the number. It won't work on voice over IP phones. It won't work on normal landline phones, but it will work on every cell phone. And so it's a great way for passive communication. So passive communication meaning I've already met with you, I already know you, and I'm just on my way home. I didn't do everything I was supposed to do on the recruiting front today, but I can backdoor voicemail you and say, hey, Richard, I was just reaching out to you to say that you were on my mind today. I'm not sure why, but you crossed my thoughts. I hope you're having a great November, and man, I'm rooting for you to have a record month. Call me back in a few minutes. Let's get together again. That's a passive voicemail that you can leave. And you can do that in a matter of 60 seconds or less without having to worry about connecting and having a larger conversation. The next one is month-end great story. The mindset behind this is that you have to create sustainability, things that you're doing again and again and again, okay? Every month end, ask your team, and if you don't have a large team, ask somebody else in your organization to tell you the best story that they've incurred within the organization for that month. Give me your best story. So I would email this out to my group, all of my people, and I would say, hey, will you guys just send me like 10 lines, 5 lines, whatever, 2 lines of something that happened to you this month within this organization that's impacted you, or in a way that we've impacted somebody else that you saw. I would do that around the 3rd week of the month. I would then take those and I would package the best one up, and then I would text message it to the people that I was engaged with on the recruiting front. So if I had my top 30 recruits list, once I had that, I would just formulate it into a text and would just say, hey, hope you had a great month in. It's the last day of the month. And you know that everyone, TRID changes things to where there really isn't a month in now on the 30th or 29th or whatever that date is, but people are still assessing how the month went, reevaluating the next month and their paycheck, reevaluating what the check on the 15th or the 30th or whatever they get paid the next month. What is that check going to be? They are looking around all of that and making an assessment on their current situation, the current organization, as to the opportunity and whether they're content, whether they're happy. The month-end great story is a phenomenal way for you to hit all 30 of your recruits in just a matter of minutes with a cut and a paste and a text. Just say, hey, I hope you had a great month in. I had to share this story with you as we come to a close of our month. This is some way we impacted a family. And it may be that one of your loan officers took a loan from another lender and you guys closed it in 8 days. It may be that you had someone in your organization that had their house burned down and you guys raised $10,000 to put them up in temporary housing for a window of time. It may be that you guys went to Keller Williams' office and helped build a HUD home. I don't know what it is, but this is a great tactic that allows you to not have to put a lot of time and effort into it. It's just the rhythm of what you do each month. The power of having your assistant dial for appointments. That's the next bullet point. If you have an assistant, and with as many people are on this call, I would say that there are a lot of people that don't have an assistant. But if you do have an assistant, you identify the talent, you identify the reasons why you want that talent to be called, but having an assistant make that phone call and saying, hey, this is Lucy, and I'm calling on the behalf of Richard Milligan. There's power in that. Not only are you able to manage your schedule better, but the subconscious piece of the subliminal piece of Richard's successful enough to have an assistant, Richard cared enough to identify me as talent and to ask somebody to call me, will actually increase the number of appointments that you set in your face-to-faces every single month. So if you have an assistant, great. If you don't have an assistant, connect with somebody in your organization that's in a similar position as you and just say, hey, let's trade off. You make these calls for me, I'll make these calls for you, and then people seeing you through the lens of having somebody else call on your behalf to establish an appointment is going to increase dramatically the number of appointments that you set, that in itself. Okay, so get creative around this if you need to, but again, it's a time management tool where you have an assistant. If you don't, it's still worth it because of what it will do in terms of increasing your appointments. The last one, a lot of you that attended this came here because I provided you with the scorecard concept. That is, let me show that to you. This is what you received. This is the scorecard. Okay, my belief is this. Peter Drucker says it well in The Effective Executive. He says that what is measured is improved. And if you are not measuring your weekly recruiting activities, you will not be a successful recruiter. Period. End of story. You will not. Okay, you will not create a sustainable long-term model for growing your branch or for growing multiple branches. That's just the truth. It's never been done. You're not the golden unicorn that's going to actually do it. It won't happen. So you have to have a system around this. This is such a cool tool. So I'm going to take a moment to explain it to you. The weekly recruiting scorecard, just you'll list your behaviors and your actions, which are on the left side of the screen. Okay, that may be each week you want to make 20 calls. We'll just use that as a random number. 20 calls. I want to identify 20 people as talent in my market. I want to make 20 calls as another one. I want to connect with X amount of people on LinkedIn. I want to move 30 people to a next step. I want to send 30 people a month-end message. Everyone's behaviors are going to be a little bit different. But have a behavior action list that every single month, every single week, you print a new one of these and you carry this with you wherever you go. As you're going through your week, so when you start your week out, move all the way over to the goal section. So if you put identify new talent and your goal is 20, you'd put a 20 in that goal box. As you're moving into Monday, put the number that you did. Put the number in Tuesday that you did. Work across your week, and when you get to the end of the week in your achieved status, write that down. So as an example, let's say you achieved 21 and your goal was 20. Well, the net of that is a +1. Okay, go to your next category. What was your goal? What did you achieve? And what was the net? It's a very easy way when you follow this for the entire week to get down to the very bottom right. What's my net score? Okay, why do loan officers fail in this business? Well, I will tell you what I know is that most loan officers have peaks and they have valleys. They have peaks and they have valleys. And the reason why they have peaks and valleys is because they don't do the consistent behaviors that we all know they need to do, right? They build their pipeline, they get fat, they get content, they get focused on managing the pipeline, they stop doing the things that they know they're supposed to do, and all of a sudden the next month's a valley. And they go, oh, I'm so tired of the peaks and the valleys, when in actuality, they haven't built a sustainable business model. If they had a model around, you could even take an idea of the scorecard around this and change the word recruiting to something else. Or you could just leave it recruiting and have them focus on building their loan officer, the realtor builder business. But if you will actually go through this week in and week out, you will understand the rhythm of your recruiting, okay? When you look at that net score, is it -15? Is it +4? Is it 0? We're aiming for hitting our goal, so it should be 0. Now, the key is tracking this, okay? Track it over a 13-week window of time. That's 1 quarter. And then when you get to your 14th week, 1 week's going to fall off, and 1 week's going to come on. And you're always going to be looking at your net score for a 13-week window of time. What it does is it allows you to identify problems before they become problems. You want to create a consistent habit. Maybe your total goal score is 80, and I will tell you, like when you add up your behaviors, when you add up your actions, the goals that I see set are typically somewhere between 80 and 120. Okay, so let's just say your goal score is 100 for all the behaviors and the actions that you put in play. When you get to the end of the week and you've achieved 100, your net score is 0. Perfect, I'm on track. But when you get to week 14 and you move that next week on, and that next week is a -15, your antennas go up. I didn't do what I needed to do. The truth about recruiting is that it's very similar to the example that Jim Collins uses in his book, Good to Great. In the book, he talks about the flywheel principle. And he says that anything that is worth having takes an immense amount of effort at the very beginning to actually build up and to actually create, the flywheel takes so much energy to get going around and around and around. But at some point, the kinetic energy is stored in the flywheel that it's actually able to go almost on its own effortlessly. That's what we're talking about in recruiting. Build a system. It's going to take some time and effort for you to do it. But when you get to a place where you've got 13 weeks of this down, when you get to your 14th week, there will be a lot of energy around this to where it's not so hard. But if you fail, you get sick, you have something happen, you go on vacation, you're going to very quickly be able to look at your 13-week floating window and see the big negative sign in there with the number associated with it, and know that you need to make that up. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Lastly, this is everything that we've talked about and we've encompassed. right? Recruiting Made Simple system really incorporates your vision, communicating your vision, having a CRM system, having specific behaviors, right? The scorecard is part of that. Accountability, the scorecard is part of your accountability system, and then ideas. And we've probably shared some ideas here today, but in the end, we really ran out of time because I'm over on this really discussing how to establish long-term projections around the scorecard, not goals, projections. Like most people when they recruit, establish goals. Like what if you could project hiring 3 loan officers in the next 90 days? What if you could project that? You can project that. And so we ran out of time to really discuss, do a deep dive on that. We didn't get a chance to discuss some ideas. So an idea, recruiting venue tactic, how you could go hire 3 to 5 loan officers through a single venue. We ran out of time to discuss that. How to increase your chances of hiring top loan officers through staging of local office visits. If you're not staging those loan officers coming to your office, it's a huge whiff. We didn't get a chance to talk about how to get the home address and why it's so important to your recruiting success and your recruiting system. We did talk about never making a cold call again. I had intended to try and talk about that. That was one of the things I wanted to discuss. Let me just share with you real quickly how to get a home address and why it's so critical. So if you get the home address, you can engage a spouse in a conversation. As an example, one of my first steps was I would send the one-word book to their house. After I would set up a face-to-face with somebody, I would talk about the one-word book and what we were doing within my branches and what that meant to us and how we did it. And people would say, man, that's really cool. Never heard of that before. When I was leaving that appointment, I would say, listen, I'd love to send you a copy of that one-word book. What's your home address? That changed. What I didn't realize when I started doing that is it changed a large part of the game around recruiting. And there's so many little things that we're not even talking about here today that are like that changed the game. Now, here's how it changed the game. It changed the game because when I sent the one-word book to the house and their wife saw it or their husband saw it, they would say, where'd you get that book? Oh, I got it from this guy in the mortgage industry that I met and had lunch with. Wow, that's really cool. And then when they went through it, or they just had it sitting on a counter or just laying around somewhere, there was was having a presence there. And the truth is that no matter who we are in this business, we go home and to some degree we share with our spouse. Had a bum day, right? Had a processor I had a conflict with. I had an underwriter who wouldn't approve a deal. I had a deal and it busted out. I had an appraisal that fell short. You have all of these things. And when we go home, we don't actually typically go home and celebrate our wins. We go home and we discuss our losses. So whenever I'm presenting this attractive leadership to somebody else, and through the lens of the spouses, well, things just aren't quite measuring up at your house. It allows me to gain a footing with the spouse without ever having an impact. So when my Christmas card gets there, when my Thanksgiving turkey gets shipped in dry ice to their house, when I'm doing some creative things that are way outside the box, because I've got the home address, I am changing the name of the recruiting game and making it relational and about relationship. And I'm doing some things that no one else in my market's going to do, okay? So we ran out of time to discuss a lot of those. Here's what I want to share with you. I do an 8-week coaching plan where I take people through this, and we spend an hour each week on the phone going through each part of this, developing your vision, communicating your vision, and I'd like to offer you the opportunity to have that. So just bear with me, and in about 3 minutes, I'm going to run through this. In my 8-week coaching, what you get is I help you set up your pillars. I help you set up your whiteboard CRM. I help you structure your 15 minutes per day. I help you build out your influencer platform. I help you build out to 5,000 LinkedIn connections if you don't have those. If you already have those, I will show you how to build 5,000 LinkedIn connections in 30 days. I develop a step-by-step plan for staging your recruit visits to your office. I set up your recruiting presentation, which incorporates your anchor stories and your pillars. And then I'll give you a storytelling process or system. It's the same one that they actually use to create great movies. I'll give that to you and help you identify the stories that you should be using with your recruits. What I typically will actually have when I'm doing this within corporations, within mortgage companies, it would be around $3,000 that I would charge to do this for individual managers or for groups. this has worked for branch managers, it's worked for area managers, regional managers, it's even worked for corporate recruiters, because it just changes the game in terms of recruiting. It's no longer about cold calling. And so what I want to show you is this. I'm going to offer to the group of people here today the opportunity to take on that coaching, but I'm also going to offer you some bonuses. As I just kind of did a surface review of the LinkedIn profiles of the people that are on this call late last night, most of you, I'd say all but maybe one of you, need significant work in the space of LinkedIn. And so we have a link, what we call LinkedIn Jumpstart. We are going to take you through a very specific LinkedIn training. We're going to actually I'm going to blow your mind on how you can run LinkedIn without having to run LinkedIn, because you sitting in front of LinkedIn when you should be recruiting doesn't make any sense. I'm going to show you how to allow LinkedIn to run itself, and how to do some really cool things that are going to get you really excited about LinkedIn that I would say everyone on this call is not using, where maybe only one is actually doing LinkedIn well. And if you don't believe me, just Google LinkedIn SSI score. That's your LinkedIn Social Selling Index score. There will pop up a bubble. Click the bubble that says, give me my score, and see what you score. The majority of the people on this call are going to score somewhere between a 30 and a 50, when you should be scoring somewhere between 80 and 90. That tells you what is your social selling index, how many times are you showing up in feeds, how many times are you showing up in searches. We will work with you to get, in the LinkedIn Jumpstart, we'll work with you to get your social selling index score to somewhere between 80 and 90 in the matter of 30 days. That's going to be a bonus we're going to give to you. The second bonus is that I'm going to give to you my 12-month coaching through the Recruiting Made Simple system. And so what that is, I do a weekly video. I continue to coach you beyond the 8 weeks. For 52 weeks, you're going to get an additional coaching session with input, advice, ideas, all centered around recruiting. And that can be an important element, because as markets change, the market could change in 2018. We are practitioners here. We're not just coaching, we're actually recruiting. We're going to help you and guide you by giving you some really creative ideas that are going to blow your mind, things I don't have time today to share with you. So as part of this, when you incorporate the LinkedIn Jumpstart and the 12-month coaching that we will give to you, all said, I would charge around $8,500 to give this to you. I'm going to fast forward for the sake of time, but if all I did was, force you to do a couple of things, would it be worth it, right? If you hire 2 to 3 new loan officers per year, would it be worth it? And then I want to ask you, what is one loan officer worth to you? And how much would you pay to get that one loan officer? And so you can see why, when you start thinking in terms of what the value of this would bring to your business, why people are paying $8,000 to have this set up for individual managers. And so my offer for you today is that I'm going to allow the people on this call to actually do this for $997. If you want to sign up for this, you just go to recruitingissimple.com, which is where you all came to register, but /go. And then that will take you to a place where you can actually sign up for it. I coach on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Once you do that, I'm going to send you my schedule for those 2 days, and you're going to get to pick up your time slot that works best for you. Right now, I've got a couple of time slots on Tuesday morning, one on Tuesday afternoon, and on Thursday, my Thursday afternoon has 3 time slots available. If those don't work for you, we'll work together around that schedule. I try to keep them the Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are typically the best days for people to actually spend an hour outside the normal business. So again, let's go over this. In the 8 weeks, we're going to actually set up your 4 pillars with anchor stories. We're going to set up your whiteboard CRM unique to you and all of your next steps. I'll bring a lot of creativity and ideas to those next steps for you. I'm going to help you structure your 15 minutes of recruiting per day. I'm going to show you how to build your influencer platform. We're going to create a step-by-step plan for staging recruit visits to your office. We're going to actually set up your recruiting presentation. I'm going to give you a storytelling process that moving forward, you can take every good story that you believe you have and actually make it a great story. I'm going to help you identify the key stories that you should be using that are the key stories of your life. And then I'm going to give you the 2 bonuses, the LinkedIn Jumpstart the 12-month coaching. The only thing you need to do is to go to the recruitingissimple.com/go to get that set up. I'm going to skip to the end here for the sake of time because I've gone long. If you still have questions around this, you can actually go to our secure voice line at the 405-757. I'm going to leave this up for you so that you can have access to this for the next couple of minutes. But it's the 405-757-4448. You can leave a detailed message there, and either myself or one of my assistants will get back to you, and we'll return your call in 15 minutes. So my wish is this, is that there's some value here, regardless of whether you sign up and you actually come into the coaching service. My goal in this, goes back to what my vision is, that I want to actually measure my success by helping more people each year live the life possible that they can only achieve through growing their brand and growing their branch. So my prayer is that there was a couple of ideas here that you can actually take and go activate right away and become more successful on the recruiting scene. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I post pretty regularly, almost daily. You can always email me at rmilligan@4crecruiting.com. And wishing you guys all the best as you go into year end. And you are in the recruiting zone, because November, December, January, February, and March, about 70 to 80% of all talent's going to move in the next 3 to 4 months. Most people start identifying towards the end of December, and in January, February, and March actually move if they're going to move. And so, I applaud you all for doing what you do and wish you all the best in the recruiting season as it comes up. And if you have any questions, or if I can be any help in any way, let me know. So with that said, the Recruiting Made Simple webinar is over, and I will also email each of you a copy of the presentation so that you have it. So all the best to you, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks so much. Bye.